AITA for I constantly refuse to share the bill and pay only for myself. Alright, here goes. I've been in the same friend group for more than half my life. We all met back in secondary school, and somehow, despite all the twists and turns, we've stuck together. We're a tight-knit group, and even now in our early 30s, we still make time to catch up. Birthdays, holidays, random dinners just because it's always a blast. We've grown up together, gone through everything from teenage breakups to our first jobs, and honestly, these people feel more like family than friends. We're comfortable with each other, we've seen it all, the good, the bad, and the deeply embarrassing. Now, one thing about me that everyone in my group knows is that I don't drink, never have, and it's just not my thing. Plus, I have some food restrictions, so I tend to keep things simple and stick to my own meal without diving into the sharing plates experience that everyone else loves. The rest of them, they're all about sharing. It's like a ritual for them to order 3 times what they can eat, try everything, and then swap plates like it's some culinary speed dating event. Years ago, one of my friends suggested I just have a separate bill, and honestly, it was a perfect solution. My meals are always simple and way cheaper, so I don't feel like I'm being overcharged for things I didn't touch. The rest of the group splits the remainder, which includes the drinks and the endless tapas-style plates they order. And, crucially, everyone seemed fine with it. It wasn't even a thing anymore, it's just how we do dinner. But last week, something happened that's left me questioning everything. A friend of mine, let's call her Sarah, recently started dating this guy named Aaron. She's mentioned him here and there, and from what I'd heard, he seemed okay. A bit outspoken, maybe, but I figured he was just confident. Sarah's had her fair share of questionable guys in the past, so I figured she knew what she was doing. This past weekend, she brought Aaron along to one of our dinners for the first time. It was meant to be a sort of casual meet the group thing. We've all done it before. Bringing new partners around is basically a rite of passage in our group. So we get to the restaurant, and things kick off like they always do. The drinks start flowing within minutes: wine, cocktails, the works. The group slips easily into our usual rhythm, with people joking and nudging each other, ordering up a storm. Sarah and a couple of the others are already on their second round of cocktails, while the rest are deliberating over which bottle of wine to open next. There's no moderation, really, just a sense of celebration that always comes out when we're all together. Someone asks if we should get a few appetizers to start, and soon the table fills up with a medley of small plates. There's no real plan, it's just one of those nights where everyone seems to want to try everything, passing food across the table, laughing as they take bites off each other's plates. It's chaotic, but it's us. Aaron fits right in, or at least it seems like he's making every effort to. He's loud, grinning from ear to ear, acting like he's known everyone for ages even though it's his first time with the whole group. He orders himself a few drinks, nodding approvingly when the group picks out a fancier bottle of wine to share. He even suggests a few more dishes, like he's hosting the night himself. There's this energy about him that's a little intense, like he's trying hard to make a big impression. He's ordering a steak and then chimes in on adding another entree to try a bit of everything. I'm watching all this, amused, just sitting back with my water and my one entree, keeping it simple as usual. I can't help but notice him glancing over at me a few times, but I brush it off. I've been around enough newcomers to know it takes a while for people to really settle in. It's his first group dinner, maybe he's just trying to find his place. When the bill finally arrives, there's that familiar buzz of everyone shifting in their seats, joking about who's picking it up tonight, and pulling out wallets. I do what I always do, I ask the server to separate my part of the bill. I've been doing this so long it's second nature by now. My friends have never minded, they know my situation. As the server hands me my bill, I reach for my card, about to settle up when Aaron's voice cuts through the chatter. Hold on, why aren't you paying your share? At first, I think he's joking, a bit of playful ribbing. You know that tone, where someone's half laughing, like they're about to reveal they're not serious. So I chuckle and explain, oh, no, I've always done it this way since I don't drink and I don't usually eat from the shared plates. This way, everyone's only paying for what they actually ordered. I'm expecting him to nod, or maybe make a light comment and move on, but he doesn't. Instead, his face twists into something else. His smile is gone, and there's this almost disdain in his expression. He's not laughing. Mate, that's ridiculous. You're part of the group, right? You should be paying your share of the table, he says, his voice louder than necessary, carrying across the table. His words hang in the air, heavy, and I feel everyone's eyes on me. It's like the energy of the whole dinner shifts in an instant, as if someone's taken the music and abruptly turned it down. I glance around, hoping someone will jump in, maybe back me up or at least diffuse the tension, but everyone's silent. There's a sense of awkwardness settling over the table, and my friends of years, are just looking away or avoiding eye contact. It's like they don't want to get involved. I feel this strange mixture of shock and embarrassment wash over me. I try again, feeling the need to explain myself, to clarify that this isn't me trying to avoid paying or freeloading. I'm not avoiding the group, it's just that I only ordered my own meal. I've done this forever, I say, my tone calmer than I feel. But it's like he's made up his mind. It's been this way forever, I add, hoping that would remind everyone, maybe prompt someone to say something. But Aaron's still shaking his head, looking at me with that same judgmental expression. It's like he can't even hear me, or he's chosen not to listen. There's no understanding, just his voice, louder and more forceful as he throws words like cheapskate and selfish across the table. Each word feels like a punch, tight-fisted, selfish. I can feel my face getting hot, and I'm just praying that one of my friends will step in. But everyone is silent, staring down at the table or off to the side. I don't know if they're shocked or just uncomfortable, but nobody is defending me, and that just makes me feel worse. Here I am, in a group I've been part of for years, being told I'm some kind of cheapskate for sticking with a system we all agreed on ages ago. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I just handed over my card, paid my bill, and left. I couldn't stand the idea of sitting there any longer with Aaron glaring daggers at me and my friends staying silent. I didn't want to escalate things, but I felt completely humiliated. I walked out with my head spinning, feeling like I'd just been called out in front of everyone for something that's never been an issue. Since then, I've been rethinking everything. Did I somehow miss the fact that my friends have resented my separate bill all these years? Was Aaron right? Was I the one being selfish and stubborn by sticking to my own bill all this time? I mean, no one has ever complained about it before, and I'd always assumed it was just understood. But now I'm wondering if they've all secretly been irritated with me for years and just never said anything. Or maybe Aaron's just that kind of guy, the type who needs everything to be fair by his own definition, even if it means bulldozing someone else. I can't help feeling like he's the one who crossed the line, but his words stuck with me. Now, I'm torn between sticking to what I know works for me or giving in to avoid another confrontation like that. I don't know. Am I the asshole for sticking with my separate bill after all these years? Or did Aaron overstep? Update 1. A few days after that dinner, I got a call from one of my friends. It was clear from her voice that the group had talked about what went down with Aaron. She was friendly but cautious, like she didn't want to bring up the mess but knew she had to. She asked if I'd come out for another group dinner, just a small one this time. She made a point to say everyone wanted me there, that they missed me last time, and that it would be a good chance to just have a nice, chill night. It felt like a peace offering, and after a few seconds of hesitation, I agreed. She didn't mention if Aaron would be there, but in the back of my mind, I knew he would. There was no way he wouldn't show up, not with how confident he'd been. When I arrived at the restaurant that night, everyone was already there, chatting and laughing like the last dinner never even happened. It felt good to be back with them, but there was still this weight in the air. I could tell people were a little tense, probably wondering if there would be another confrontation. Sure enough, a few minutes after I sat down, Sarah walked in with Aaron by her side. He looked as smug as ever, smiling at everyone as if he'd single-handedly changed the group dynamic with his bold demands last time. He settled down across from me, giving me this almost challenging look, and I felt my stomach clench. But I smiled back, determined not to let him get under my skin. As the night went on, people started ordering drinks and appetizers, getting back into their usual groove. Aaron, of course, wasted no time diving into the menu, suggesting plates and even pushing for a few of the pricier options. I was trying to keep my cool, but I could feel him watching me, like he was waiting for me to go through my usual routine of ordering my own thing and splitting off my part of the bill. At one point, Aaron leaned back in his chair, looking right at me, and brought up the last dinner. He made a loud comment about how some people like to dump the rest of the group with their own tab instead of paying their fair share. I could feel my face heating up as he practically called me out in front of everyone. He asked if I'd be doing the same this time, still smirking like he had all the power here. But that night, I was done explaining myself, done trying to keep the peace while he dragged my name through the mud. I didn't respond. I simply glanced at him and then turned back to the menu. And as I scanned the options, a thought started to form. If Aaron wanted me to split the bill so badly, if he was so insistent that it was only fair to share everything equally, then maybe I'd give him exactly what he wanted. So I decided I'd order like I'd never ordered before. Every time Aaron suggested something, I nodded along and added my own recommendation. I went for the most extravagant items, appetizers that could have been meals on their own, and the biggest steak on the menu. I ordered drinks even though I don't drink and made sure to pick the ones that came in fancy glasses, the ones with ingredients you can't pronounce. I ordered desserts halfway through the meal, just to try them out. Every time I caught a glimpse of Aaron's face, he looked slightly confused, like he couldn't figure out what was going on. My friends were shocked too, watching me pile up orders, some of them raising eyebrows, a few even chuckling under their breath. I could tell they were amused but curious, probably wondering what had gotten into me. But no one said anything, and everyone just went along with it. The meal turned into a true feast. There were so many plates on the table that we were passing dishes around, sampling bits of everything while the drinks kept flowing. People were laughing and getting louder, the tension finally melting away. It was one of the best dinners we'd had in a while, the kind of night where the table was packed with food, and everyone was so wrapped up in conversation that time seemed to blur. Finally, when the laughter died down and people started settling into that post-dinner lull, the bill arrived. The server set it down in the middle of the table, and I reached out, grabbing it before anyone else had a chance. I could feel Aaron watching me, his smug smile fading slightly as I scanned the bill. It was massive, easily one of the biggest tabs we'd had as a group. I glanced up at Aaron, catching his eye, and announced that if he was so keen on splitting the bill equally, then this time, I was perfectly fine with it. The look on Aaron's face was priceless. He glanced over at the bill, his eyes widening as he realized that the bulk of the charges were from my side of the table. He had clearly expected me to order my usual simple meal to keep things modest, but instead, I'd outdone everyone else. He opened his mouth to protest, starting to point out that maybe the bill shouldn't be split since I'd ordered so much. But I cut him off with a calm look, reminding him that splitting the bill equally was his suggestion, the very thing he'd fought me over at the last dinner. He'd made it clear that we were all part of the group, and everyone should pay their fair share, so that's exactly what we'd do. I watched as realization dawned on him. He looked around, trying to gauge if anyone else would back him up, but this time, no one seemed willing to step in. I could see some of my friends trying to hold back laughter, a few even shooting me knowing looks, like they finally understood what I was doing. Aaron had no choice but to go along with it, and the rest of us split the bill equally, just as he'd wanted. He looked completely dumbfounded as he pulled out his wallet, realizing he'd have to pay far more than he'd bargained for. By the time we all left the restaurant, I could tell he was fuming, though he tried to keep his frustration under wraps. I walked out with a sense of satisfaction, a quiet victory that I didn't need to say out loud. Aaron had insisted on fairness, and I'd shown him exactly what that looked like. My friends seemed amused, a few of them giving me nods or pats on the back as we said our goodbyes. The tension that had lingered since the last dinner felt like it had finally lifted. Update 2. The morning after that dinner, I woke up to a series of messages from an unknown number. It took me a moment to realize it was Aaron. Apparently, whatever unresolved tension he'd carried home from the dinner hadn't worn off overnight. His text started off questioning what kind of joke I'd pulled with the bill, asking why I'd ordered so much food only to split the check equally. He couldn't wrap his head around it, accusing me of doing it to embarrass him in front of the group and calling it a childish stunt. He even threw in a few lines about how I'd made a fool out of him, as if that dinner had been some orchestrated play just to take him down a peg. It was honestly baffling. He seemed completely oblivious to the irony of what he was saying. Here was this guy, who'd charged into our group dynamic like a bulldozer, stirring up drama over something that had been perfectly fine for years. And now, he was the one feeling wrong because, for once, he had to deal with the consequences of his own demands. I couldn't help but laugh. I mean, wasn't it him who insisted that splitting the bill equally was fair, that we were all part of the group and had to contribute evenly? In my response, I kept things as calm and straightforward as possible, telling him that I'd simply been hungry. I reminded him that he was the one who had pushed for this equal share approach in the first place, so I thought it'd be best to respect his preferences. If he wanted fairness, I figured he'd appreciate everyone paying the same amount, regardless of what they ordered. That seemed to be the logic he'd followed, right? Aaron, however, didn't seem interested in any of that. He was adamant that I'd somehow gone out of my way to make him look bad, that I'd sabotaged him in front of the group by ordering more than I usually would. According to him, it was my fault he ended up paying more than he'd planned, and he even went so far as to imply I owed him an apology. The thing was, I didn't feel even remotely bad about what had happened. For years, I'd quietly paid my own way at these dinners without complaint, always opting for the most affordable option, sticking to what worked for my budget and my dietary needs. And none of my friends ever questioned it. They were more than fine with me paying separately. In fact, it had been a suggestion from one of them ages ago. But Aaron had decided to make it a whole ordeal. He'd gone out of his way to single me out, pushing the whole group to buy into his idea of what was fair. And now, after getting exactly what he demanded, he was bitter because it hadn't played out in his favor. But the real kicker was that Aaron didn't just stop there. After our exchange, I shrugged it off, thinking he'd vented his frustrations and that would be the end of it. But later in the day, I found out from a friend that Aaron had messaged her too, complaining about what happened. Apparently, he'd been going around to a few people in the group, expressing his discontent and even suggesting that I wasn't a good fit for these dinners if I was going to keep stirring up drama. It was absurd. This guy, who'd only joined us a couple of times, was now campaigning to get me excluded from my own friend group. I decided to drop a message in our group chat, the one without Aaron, where it was just the core friends who'd known each other for years. I laid it all out, explaining how Aaron had been texting me nonstop, accusing me of setting him up at the dinner, and how he couldn't let go of this idea that I'd somehow played him. I mentioned how he'd been pushing me to take responsibility for ordering more food than usual, as if it were some kind of offense against him personally. It didn't take long for my friends to respond, and their reactions were a mix of amusement and disbelief. Apparently, Aaron had been messaging them too, spinning his side of the story, claiming I'd gone out of my way to make him look bad and that I was toxic to the group dynamic. He'd even suggested that maybe it'd be better if I didn't come to the next few dinners. The group chat quickly blew up with laughter and eye-roll emojis as my friends shared screenshots of their conversations with him. They all thought it was ridiculous that he was trying to cancel me from our own group dinners. They knew me, knew how I'd always handled the bill and my own preferences with zero issues. We'd built this unspoken system that worked for everyone, and here was this newcomer thinking he could swoop in and dictate how we should split things. My friends were cracking jokes, saying they should have charged him a newbie tax for even thinking he could take on the role of dinner dictator. They found it hilarious that he was so worked up over something as basic as a shared bill. A few of my friends even pointed out how obvious it was that Aaron felt embarrassed, but instead of owning it, he was trying to pass off his own discomfort as my fault. They saw right through him. One friend laughed about how he'd gone from trying to be the big man to playing the victim the moment things didn't go his way. It was like he couldn't handle the reality that he'd essentially orchestrated the entire situation himself. We shared stories back and forth, recounting little moments from the dinner where Aaron had tried to lead the group or make comments about how we should do things the right way, and it became clear that none of us were taking him seriously. They all reassured me that he was the one being absurd, that he'd crossed the line by messaging everyone about it, and they found his whole campaign to get me banned from the group laughably out of touch. There was this sense of camaraderie, a reminder that we'd been through far too much together to let one loud, insecure outsider disrupt our dynamic. By the end of it, we'd all agreed that Aaron's over-the-top reaction said a lot more about him than it did about me. It was obvious he wasn't cut out for the group if he couldn't handle a simple dinner bill without blowing up. And honestly, I couldn't help but feel a little bit of satisfaction. Aaron had shown up, tried to change things for everyone, and ultimately made a fool of himself. Meanwhile, the rest of us were still here, still laughing about it, and still planning our next dinner, one that he wouldn't be invited to.